Welcome to This Explainer. Look, today we're stepping into the shadows to explore what is arguably the most complex battleground on Earth, the human mind. Think about it. Have you ever walked away from a totally normal conversation feeling just inexplicably guilty? Or maybe you've spent hours replaying an argument, genuinely wondering if you're losing your grip on reality. Well, you are not alone. Today, we're decoding the hidden architecture of human control. We're going to break down 7 dark psychological tricks that architects of influence use every single day. So let's dive into this and strip away the shadows.
The core truth of psychological warfare is actually pretty terrifying. The most dangerous manipulation, it doesn't involve shouting. It doesn't involve physical threats. It leaves absolutely zero physical marks. It operates entirely in the silence. We're talking about a perfectly timed pause, a very specific tone of voice, or just a look that screams disappointment. It's literally the art of getting someone to hand over the keys to their own mind without them ever even realizing they did it.
Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, I'm way too smart to fall for that. But here is a brilliantly counterintuitive truth straight from behavioral psychology. Highly intelligent, conscientious, and empathetic people, they are actually the most vulnerable targets. I know, sounds crazy, right? But think about it. Manipulation exploits the exact qualities we admire. Empathy makes you deeply feel a manipulator's manufactured pain. Conscientiousness makes you work twice as hard to fix a toxic relationship. And your intelligence? That just gives you the brain power to brilliantly rationalize a manipulator's bad behavior. They basically weaponize our most primal human needs for safety, belonging, and validation, constructing what is essentially an invisible cage around us.
Which brings us to Section 1. The invisible cage, the hidden psychology of influence. Moving right along to Section 2, the illusion of love, love bombing, and emotional mirroring.
Okay, so this trap is often set by artificially engineering profound trust in the extremely early stages of a relationship. And by the way, this happens in professional dynamics or even a sales pitch too. It's called love bombing, and it follows a really devastating 3-step cycle. First up is idealization. You're absolutely flooded with excessive affection, texts, and praise. This physically floods your brain with dopamine and oxytocin. It literally creates a chemical addiction to this person. But nobody can sustain that performance forever. Next comes devaluation. The affection is suddenly withdrawn, and you face a crushing physiological emotional withdrawal. Finally, the discard. You're just left there, desperate to win back an affection that honestly was completely manufactured from the start. Closely tied to love bombing is our next trick, emotional mirroring. Humans are neurologically wired to trust what feels familiar. So in emotional mirroring, a manipulator intentionally hacks your brain's mirror neurons. They'll subtly mimic your specific posture, your speech rhythms, and even claim to share your deepest, most niche values. Suddenly, your obscure favorite hobby? Oh wow, it's their lifelong passion too. They present themselves as your perfect, custom-built soulmate. You think you're falling in love with another person, but actually, you're just falling in love with your own reflection.
So, how do you defend against a mirror? It's simple. You test it. When you feel like a connection is moving impossibly fast, introduce some genuine complexity. Express an opinion you don't actually hold, or just suddenly change your stance on a topic. An authentic connection, they'll engage with that complexity, they might even disagree with you. But a strategic mirror? Watch closely. They will instantly pivot to match your new stance, because at the end of the day, they have no true foundation of their own.
Section 3. The war on reality, gaslighting.
If a manipulator wants to completely own your reality, they deploy a trick known as gaslighting. This is arguably the most destructive psychological trick out there because it's specifically designed to systematically destroy your grip on your own mind. Gaslighting is basically an assault on your epistemic trust, which is just a fancy way of saying your ability to trust your own experience of the world. By repeatedly and confidently denying objective reality, the abuser triggers something called the illusory truth effect. If they say you're imagining things, or I never said that, often enough, your brain literally starts to process it as truth. Eventually, you become entirely dependent on the abuser to tell you what is real.
You really need to memorize these red flags to protect yourself. Watch out for blatant lies told with absolutely terrifying confidence. Look out for the denial of objective proof, even when you have the text messages right there in front of them. Watch for constant accusations that you are too emotional or paranoid. And then there's triangulation, where they falsely claim that your own friends and family agree that you're losing your mind.
Okay, here is your survival strategy. First, you have to practice epistemological hygiene. Basically, document everything. Keep screenshots, send yourself emails with timestamps.
Second, and this is absolutely critical, never ever argue with a gaslighter over facts. They aren't looking for the truth, they are looking for control. State your reality calmly, just once, "I know what I saw," and then disengage completely.
Section 4. Silence and guilt weaponized. The silent treatment and guilt manipulation. Now let's look at how manipulators extract compliance without ever even raising their voice. They rely instead on emotional starvation. Have you ever been on the receiving end of the silent treatment? It is awful. And it's vital to contrast healthy self-regulation, like, taking an hour to cool off, with weaponized silence. Clinical science actually shows us that social ostracism activates the exact same pain centers in the human brain as physical injury. It literally hurts. When they give you the silent treatment, you go into anxious monitoring. You hyperanalyze their every move, desperate to end the pain, and you'll often find yourself apologizing for things you didn't even do, just to restore the connection.
Right alongside that silence is guilt manipulation. A manipulator will hijack your moral compass through a heavy debt of conscience. We're talking about the constant recounting of past favors, the big sighing martyrdom, the classic "after all I've done for you" speech. They might remind you of a minor favor they did months ago just because you asked them to wash their own dishes today. They don't make explicit demands. They just create this heavy emotional atmosphere of suffering, turning your healthy independence into manufactured shame. They make it so that yielding to them feels like the only relief.
So what is your psychological counterattack here? You must separate factual events from emotional fiction. If they say, "I sacrificed everything for you," you agree with the premise, but you absolutely deny the obligation. You say, "I appreciate what you've done, but I am still maintaining my boundary." And regarding the silent treatment, never chase them. Match their silence with your own peace.
Section 5. The Architecture of Fear, Fear-Based Control and Reverse Psychology. Let's dive into the most primal mechanisms of control, where manipulators completely bypass your logical brain to directly hijack your nervous system. There is a terrifying truth in behavioral psychology. Explicit, constant punishment is actually way less controlling than unpredictable punishment. It's called intermittent reinforcement. If an explosive boss or a volatile partner only erupts occasionally and unpredictably, you end up spending enormous cognitive energy trying to decode the pattern just to keep yourself safe. Your nervous system becomes hypervigilant. The fear essentially becomes a leash that you put on yourself.
On the flip side of that coin is reverse psychology. This is the ultimate illusion of choice. By explicitly telling you that you probably can't handle a project or that a product is not for everyone, the manipulator triggers psychological reactants. They exploit your ego and your pride, making you rebel directly into a cage they carefully constructed for you. You think you're proving them wrong, but you're doing exactly what they wanted all along. To break this architecture, you need these essential defenses in your toolkit. When your ego is challenged, take a breath and pause before reacting. Ask yourself if the drive is yours or if it was manufactured by them. When facing fear-based control, ask for concrete evidence of the vague threats they throw at you. And finally, accept the worst-case scenario. If you accept the fear, like just saying, "Okay, if they fire me, I'll find another job," their weapon is suddenly completely empty. Someone who is not afraid to lose simply cannot be controlled.
Section 6. The Armor of Awareness, Reclaiming Your Mind.
It's time to shift from the darkness of these manipulative tactics to some grounded psychological resilience. Look, surviving manipulation doesn't require you to become cold or cynical or shut off from the world. True protection actually comes from developing sharp, discerning emotional intelligence. You can remain completely open to genuine human connection, but with a trained eye to see exactly when that connection is being exploited.
Here is your daily survival toolkit for building psychological immunity. First, always trust your felt experience over their logic. If your nervous system is screaming that something is wrong, that discomfort is a valid data point. Do not ignore it. Second, cultivate genuine, reciprocal relationships that pull you out of isolation. And finally, practice rigid boundary setting. Become comfortable with the uncomfortable act of saying no. We've covered some incredibly intense ground today in this explainer, from the dizzying highs of love bombing to the totally reality-bending tactics of gaslighting. But here's the bottom line. Your mind is yours. It always has been. Reclaim it, trust your reality, and guard it fiercely. If this explainer empowered you, please hit subscribe for more. Stay aware, stay grounded,
and ask yourself, who is holding the keys to your mind today?